Hello. All right, guys. Mic check. Was acting funny. We are now here. Welcome to Castcast. As you guys know, I'm your host, Casty Streeter, and we are to week 11 in the NFL season with 7 weeks left. 7 weeks. We're to the later part of the season, obviously late, you know, midish, late November, obviously. And we, have some spicy games. We have some spicy games, this weekend. God, a lot of injuries. I overall don't know what to make of this. I think I wouldn't say it's ruined the league this year, but it's been so common that it's it's really going to come down to who's healthy, I guess, come postseason more so than other years, I think. Especially in the AFC, I feel like the AFC, goodness, a lot of QBs injured. But moving on, we have we have Cardinals and Texans is the first game that we're going to be looking at. And the Cardinals, goodness, Kyler Murray comes back. They obviously win last week against Atlanta. Probably not a game they should have won. I don't know what to say about the fact that, Kyler comes back and they look, a bit more magical, putting up 25 to Atlanta's 23. But to me, they've struggled a lot at quarterback. And that ultimately has really, really affected their season. Looking at Houston, obviously, we have CJ Stroud, who, some have been like, oh, he's not worthy of being an MVP candidate, even though it's the best rookie season so far that we have ever seen. And I will say that. But, looking at these injuries, Will Anderson Jr., questionable, not good, and looking at, I guess, the full injury report here for the Texans, um, here for the Texans, it's like, they only have a couple of guys out really, but a lot of people on the injury report. I guess Damian Pierce is out. Henry To'oto is out. Jimmy Ward is out, unfortunately. But this is a team that I think, their offense is pretty healthy. They got a lot of guys listed here, but, a lot of full participations and then a good amount of outs. But, looking at this, I think that the Texans, I think they're going to come out swinging. I think that, with them only being essentially, I guess you could say 2 games behind if they were going to pull ahead of Jacksonville, depending on if Jacksonville wins this game. But they're a game behind Jacksonville in a division where it's like Indianapolis is somehow still lingering around, I guess. And you look like a team that could possibly win the division with, them having the most or the second most points scored and then the second least given up. I think that, they could overthrow Jacksonville. Jacksonville to me has just not looked consistent when they've went up against these teams that are special with the passing game. Their latest loss withstanding against the Niners. And it's just like I think that, the Texans are way ahead of schedule on they're what they're doing this year. And Nico Collins is looking great, like I said, and then you have Arizona who it's like, has a few guys out on defense and then Zach Pascal out, but and a lot of guys banged up on this defense. I'm looking at, you also got oh my gosh, sorry. You got Kevin Strana, you got Zeke Turner, you got, you know, uh you like I mentioned a couple guys out, but I fully expect the Texans to win this game. If they lose this game, that instills doubt that it's like, "Oh, are we really not going to, try to take advantage of the fact that we're in a winnable division and then go up against a team who, yes, they had a win last week, but, they're coming to your home, stadium and, hopefully, and D'Amico Ryans is gonna have them ready for Kyler Murray, I think, and I think that this Cardinals team, it's like, yeah, they had kind of a huge upswing with the return of Murray, who was kind of an anomaly, but I think that, yeah, Houston's gonna be able to win this game because I think that CJ Stroud could potentially have a really big game, a rebound week, compared to what he did last week, and I mean they beat Cincinnati, which was huge in my opinion, but there are only a few games where they lost to Carolina. And it's like you've really got to put that in the past and start to, show that you're going to win these games. And they could finally go out with, I guess, a commanding victory this week because a lot of their games have been really close recently. Where it's like the only team they beat by 7 points was New Orleans 4 weeks ago. But yeah, I'm gonna give props to the Texans, and I think they win this game by potentially 10 points, to be honest with you. But moving on, the next game we have is Titans Jaguars, a game where I think even though they're giving the Jaguars this fat advantage, you never know with divisional games, I guess. But I do think the Jaguars win this game because I think that they do really well against the run usually. This is a team that their run defense is, pretty sound. And, you know, the the Titans are on a 2-game losing streak. Um, some growing pains with Will Levis, I think. I think that, he came out and he did, have a really strong game when he first came out, but, you know, that's not always how it's gonna be. That, fresh burst of energy, can come and go really quickly. But I think that because it's at Jacksonville and because, the Titans haven't won a single away game, obviously, I think that, Jacksonville wins this, barring some crazy thing with Tennessee, whose primary strength is their running game with Derrick Henry. But I fully expect, yeah, I expect the Jaguars to rebound. They just got pummeled. They just got humbled a lot, obviously, and hopefully they put the naysayers away. I guess as you could say. Um, but moving on, we have a very interesting game. Um, and I mean, I was looking at the injuries here, and really not that many that are like that I'm like is gonna affect too much in my opinion. I guess you have, Sean Murphy Bunting and I mean out, Traylon Burks out, and Andre Dillon out with a concussion as well. And then you have Jamal Agnew on the Jaguars and Tyson Campbell. But I really think that Agnew is, their third guy that they go to. And a few guys questionable, but no super huge like injury concerns, I guess, on the Jaguars in my opinion. But moving on, we have Raiders Dolphins. Now, kind of interesting. The Raiders obviously won their last game 6 days ago on, I believe this was Monday Night Football. Or I guess goodness, I guess I can't. I'm trying to remember, but yeah, it was a close game, and after they went out and they pummeled the Giants after the firing of their head coach McDaniels, and it seems like they say that they have their guy, but who knows? And O'Connell, but I just think that this is going to be a game where unless you have Crosby getting after Tua, who I think is susceptible to getting sacked a lot because he isn't that mobile of a guy. He's more of a pocket passer. but I think that this game, is going to be taken by Miami. I really don't think that I can expect much of a, I wouldn't say not a fight with the Raiders, but I just think that with how many weapons the Dolphins have, how good they are in the receiving game, you just I just can't really give it to Las Vegas, to be honest with you. And it's I hate to say it because I think that they have a team where it's like if they were to play really well, they could potentially, kind of milk the clock and keep it away from Miami with Josh Jacobs at running back. But overall, I think that I just think that I think that there's really just not that much of a shot, talent wise in this game. I think, I don't particularly like Miami because their defense does seemingly give up a lot of points, even with, even, huh, even with, their last five. They beat Kansas City, or I mean, they lost to Kansas City. I'm sorry. They are coming off a bye week, obviously, this week, too. So it's like, you're coming off a Raiders team that they played a tough defense, type of thing. But it's like the Dolphins, I don't know, their defense. I mean, you could say that it's like, but against these, better teams like Philadelphia and Kansas City, you just haven't been able to prove it. And I don't think that they're really going to be able to prove anything against the Raiders. But the thing is that the Dolphins has always seemed to do good against mediocre teams. So it's like that's why I really don't think that the Raiders have much of a chance here. And I mean, this is a crazy demographic, I guess, where it's like, oh, 90%, shot or whatever. It wouldn't surprise me though, and looking, at this, I do think I'm going to give I think I'm going to give the Dolphins like a 17-point advantage because I think the Raiders will score, but I just don't think they'll score very much. And in this game will be ran by the Dolphins potentially, unless you have Max Crosby getting pressure on Tua quite a bit or pressure comes elsewhere. Um, yeah, so that's really all I have for this game. I don't think it's going to be very close, to be honest with you. Now thinking about it with the bye week and all of that. But moving on, we have Cowboys Panthers. There's not much to say about this game. There isn't that much to say about this game. I'm actually shocked that um I'm not, I'm actually kind of shocked that this game isn't around the same kind of spectrum as Dolphins Raiders, in the sense that like people are have been hyping up the Cowboys, but you look at the Cowboys and their last loss have come against two of the premier teams in the NFC. I have continued to say this, where you have the Cowboys and everyone's preaching how good they are and what a great team they are and all of that. And it's like, really, are they that great of a team when, essentially you're kind of like in the same boat as the Dolphins. You're just in the NFC, where it's like you go up against, your Super Bowl contenders, the teams that are going to be, oh yeah, come playoffs are the teams you're going to want to watch out for. But it's like, you lose to San Fran, and I do get it that it was when San Fran was fully healthy and they were on, a slew of win games, but it's like it's no excuse. You've had, such a good season when you play bad teams. But it's like if you can only beat these mediocre teams, and I mean you look at this, it's like the wins here. They barely beat the Chargers, who are at this point a 4-5 team. You smothered the Rams, but the Rams clearly, have their own issues. And then you beat up on the Giants. Like, who cares? Like week one, where it's like, oh yeah, you beat up on this team every single time you play them because it's just Big Brother beating on, the brother that's like 5 years younger than them or whatever else. But it's like you don't even, in my opinion, you didn't even really compete that well in Philadelphia when you lost to them, even though it was only a 5-point game at the end. And it's like, tell me who you are when you play a good team. But yeah, this week they get an easy game against Carolina. Maybe Carolina somehow sparks something. Maybe they run the ball a lot because I do think, the Cowboys, like what I've said, is that their major weakness is that they are not good against the run game. You run the ball against them, and they just don't have that great of a run defense, type of thing. And that's how you can expose them and then open up the pass. But yeah, this is a game where it's like I think that they're ultimately going to smoke the Panthers, and there's really not that much of a competition. I'm gonna give them, I'm gonna give them a 14-point advantage because I don't really think I don't really think the Panthers really have that much of a chance unless everything clicks right for them. So yeah, Cowboys by 2 touchdowns in this game. Next we got Bears Lions. The Bears go to visit the Lions, who have 2 home games this week, one tomorrow and then one on Thanksgiving. And obviously the Lions, the thing about them is that they've been looking really good this year. 7-2, it's probably the best that they could have hoped for type of thing. They could have very easily, in my opinion, been like 6-3. They could have, that sort of thing. They obviously, week one, they, got kind of lucky against a Chiefs team that just, killed themselves with drop passes. But, looking at Detroit, the thing about them to me is that you your defense has been, I wouldn't say terrible, but I would say just not where you want it to be, and I'm kind of looking over here, sorry, I'm looking over at this and I'm wondering if Justin Fields, I'm assuming he's going to play, and quite a game to come back. I don't think the Bears really have any hopes for, playoffs or anything like that, but I do think that they are a team that it's like, do we really want to see at the end of the year here if Fields has that mentality where he's going to come out and keep on playing harder? Because I remember when they got their first win this year, and DJ Moore was saying he's like, oh yeah, he's just got that locked in focus, and every single loss was making him more and more focused. And he did just kind of look like a man on a mission where it is hard to keep that loss after loss. And, I think that this is kind of Fields' trial. Like, I'm sure, come next offseason, if Fields doesn't live up to expectations, they could potentially draft a QB, obviously, but there's so many options with the Bears. Or they could, if Fields looks like he's able to be at least serviceable or show a hint of greatness at the end of this year, maybe they keep him. And with the 2 picks that they have, they could either trade down or they could draft instant impact players, and, further give him what he needs. Cause I do think this O line does kind of need help for him. And, there's definitely some other things that, you could get on the Bears. I mean, you could also just go and get help on defense because, I mean, they obviously went out and they got Sweat at the trade deadline, but you could always use another pass rusher. You can never have enough pass rushers in today's league. And, you could see, so it's like the fact that this is a division game makes it interesting. It is in Detroit, so it's going to be tough. The Bears, I don't really think are going to be able to do too much against the run game of the Lions, which, they have the best PFF grade, I think, for running attack on their O-line because their O-line is just so stacked on the Lions. And, the Lions obviously very clear in terms of the division right now. You do surprisingly still have the Vikings that are kind of, have reemerged and are kind of not breathing down your neck. But if Dobbs continues to play the way he does, and then they get Jefferson back and they somehow he comes back and they're just a force to be reckoned with at the end of the year. You want to make sure you have as big of a cushion as you can being Detroit. And this week could be a very big week for them, getting two more wins, going to 9-2, and solidifying that they at least have a winning season, you know, and further pressing their case that they should be the division leader, which I think that they are right now. Even with the defensive issues that they're having, I think that they have the talent. They just really need to be able to actually play. But looking at this, the Lions, they don't really have too many injuries. You got Isaiah Buggs, their DT, out with an illness. Jonah Jackson, the guard, out with a wrist and ankle injury. And, Melifonwu, their safety, with questionable with a hand injury. But otherwise, very, very healthy team. They have a few other guys listed here, like Frank Ragnow, but he was full without any injury designation. And, so no prime injuries, a good time in the year to be healthy, and you got Noah Sewell, who is obviously, related to Penei Sewell, out on the Bears, and otherwise, Tremaine Edwin's still with like a knee injury who's questionable. I'm sure he'll be good to go. Like I said, Fields doesn't have a injury designation this week, and they say full participation in practice, but he's on there. I'm fully expecting him to go and play because it would seem odd if they were to go and they were to start. I can't remember his name, the rookie that they have backing him up. That's a younger player that he's essentially a place in. But I guess down to my prediction, I think that the Lions here could win by 10 optimistically, but since it's a division game, I would be more inclined to say, 6-point victory. I think that the Bears, depending on how good Fields is coming back, of course, it could be really bad, to be honest, or it could be really good. But, at least Fields gives them more of a mobile threat as well, to expose the defense a little bit, where they didn't really have that as much with the other QB. He wasn't really that mobile. But yeah, I'm gonna say Lions by 6. I would be cautiously optimistic to say 10, to be honest with you, because I think it could be a blowout, but division game. Moving on, we have Chargers visiting the Packers in Green Bay. Obviously, two teams that have kind of struggled this year. You have the Chargers now 9 games in at 4-5, and the Packers, 3-6. Um, they're giving this game to the Chargers, which I'm not gonna lie, I agree with, in the sense that Herbert carves up defenses. And looking at this game, it doesn't reassure me either that Rashawn Gary this week got put on the designation with a shoulder injury. And I'm just like, that is just never a good thing. Jair Alexander has a shoulder injury. He was limited in practice. Rudy Ford is doubtful. So more than likely it's going to be Johnson Jr. filling in for him. Even Christian Watson went on the injury list with a non-designation. I'm sure he's going to be good to go. Quay Walker still has his groin injury, making him questionable. And this is obviously a team with, it's kind of miraculous, but they have Jay Kelly, who's their leading rusher, but Eckler is their workhorse back, obviously, that, does the primary amount of carries. But they use him in so much more than just the run game, obviously, because he's just that dual threat kind of guy that, like, very good safety blanket for Herbert, who reads the field and is just so accurate. I would be willing to say that I think that Herbert is one of the most accurate He's one of the most accurate QBs in the league, at this point. Like, there's just no denying that whoever he's throwing to, it, you know, they'll have a chance to catch it, and that's just, crazy. But the one thing that I'll say is that with Gary possibly being, and I'm sure they're going to limit him, is that Lucas Van Ness is going to get more playing time, and I think that Lucas Van Ness has been playing very well when he has gotten time, getting pressure on the quarterback, getting a few sacks, but he just hasn't really gotten significant playing time. The thing about the Packers this year is that we have, Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary are the starting pass rushers. And then you've got Lucas Van Ness, Kingsley and Igbari. And, those are the other guys that they've been plugging in. But it seems to me like whenever I look, even when they sub Gary or Smith, they've been putting in Igbari in, you know. But Lucas Van Ness, I'm hoping gets a real shot on Sunday if Gary's injury is really that bad. And it's never shoulder injuries are just never very good, And I mean, Aaron Jones kind of had his hamstring injury, a little bit, and you know, Ellen Jenkins has had a kind of a knee injury this year that's been bugging him throughout the year, but I think he's been playing fine when he has been playing, and he's been on an injury designation. But I guess moving on to the Chargers and their injuries, you have Keenan Allen also with a shoulder injury. I feel like this is the year where I've seen more shoulder injuries than like ever, to be honest. And they are not fun at all. It's like, as a wide receiver, you don't think about it as much when you're raising your arms up to catch a ball, but having a bad shoulder is going to affect your hand placement and everything to do with like being able to, move your arms and run downfield. Gerald Everett being out, kind of sucks for them. They're starting tight end. I'm pretty sure he is. And then, you have JT Woods, the safety, out. But otherwise, no super like no super bad injuries here. I know that Rashawn Slater had kind of a lingering injury. He's their best tackle, and then Khalil Mack, I think they rested for most of the week. He got veteran rest for him to be ready to go Sunday as he's getting a little up there in age. But obviously, looking at the Chargers, they just went up against Detroit, who, is a pretty good football team, and we're neck and neck with them offensively, and they put up 38, which wasn't enough to win against Detroit's 21. But my Packers ultimately looking better early last week, but still having the same kind of woes where it's like you can't get over 20 points and you can't really show that you're going to take over the game offensively. So that's the reason why I think the Chargers, are probably going to win this game. I do like the way that like our Valentine and Valentine are playing if Jair doesn't go. And then you also have Keyshawn Nixon, who has been, I think, playing really, really well in the slot. Been very competitive and sticking to guys. But the thing about this game that I think about is that like we just got gorged on the run. It seems like if we do defend the run, we either defend it really well or we just turn over against the run. And who knows like what we're gonna get this game, and if Quay plays, is he gonna be 100% with that groin? And it's just I overall just think that this is gonna be an uphill game for the Packers, and at this point, like it is kind of make or break for the season. If you're going to 7 losses, that means you can only have a max of 10 wins in the season, and that is 7 more games against, some good opponents. Where it's like the Packers still have to play the Lions. They have to play the Vikings again. They have to play the Chiefs, I'm pretty sure, after they play the Lions or something like that. And it just doesn't look very favorable for them. So it's like this is the last game that you have where it's like, let's get some momentum with this game for the rest of the season. And obviously, with the Chargers, they need to be able to at least get ahead of Las Vegas before they even think about whether they can make the playoffs. And I mean, their division, is obviously very middle record heavy, where it's like everyone's around 500 besides Kansas City. And who knows what's going to happen at the end of the year. But now is really the time where it's like it's right around Thanksgiving. You've got to turn it around this week, or you might as well call it a year in terms of, whether you're going to make the playoffs and that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm going to say Chargers by, they say by 3, which is just surprising to me, but I'm going to say Chargers by 7. I really think that they have a better offensive scheme than Pittsburgh did last week, and Pittsburgh looked like, I mean, not that they could do anything, that they wanted, but like they were running all over us, and then it's like Pickett ultimately had like an average day, but he had guys that were just getting wide open at some points, and it doesn't bode well when you play a guy like Kenny Pickett, and then the next week you're going up against, a Pro Bowler potential like Herbert, you know. But yeah, Chargers by 7. Moving on, we have Giants versus the Commanders. The Commanders obviously being sellers at the trade deadline, but then, Daniel Jones going out for the rest of the year with his injury. So I always forget who they are actually. I always forget who their QB is now. Tommy DeVito. Still haven't really watched too much from him, but it's like you've got, I mean, I guess the one thing that I'll say about him is you got your weapons fully healthy besides I guess Darren Waller. Darren Waller's out, so you've got Daniel Bellinger, who I think is a good young tight end with good speed, good size, type of thing. But yeah, you still got Saquon, Darius Hodges, and Wandale Robinson, and then Jalen Hyatt, your young blazer of a rookie. But yeah, you're going up against a Washington team that even since trading, their defense seems to have not really, I wouldn't say regressed. Um, Obviously you go against teams like Philadelphia, who it's like has the potential to score a lot. You lose to the Giants, but you just have a bad offensive game. But it's like some of these, and not a lot of these teams are obviously like high scoring in a sense, but you look at the Giants, and the Giants have just absolutely been getting beat. They ended, their last win coming against Washington, which is crazy, and I really think that the Commanders are going to be out for blood this time. They're going up against a team where it's like they don't have Evan Neal is out. Bobby McCain questionable. Andrew Thomas, who's had an injury, been on injury all year, questionable. And it's like they're obviously without Waller, so you don't even have to worry about him. It's like you really have, the game right in front of you where it's like you have easily the best weapon in Scary Terry. And, and then even Robinson has been doing well for you. And then, of course, you have Howell, who it's like not a perfect rookie season by any means, but I think better than anybody really expected, to be honest with you. Where it's like you could still potentially even get 4K yards with this guy. And you're in a division where it's like you're more than likely probably not going to be able to get ahead of Dallas, unless they lose some streaks. But looking at this, you've essentially almost doubled points over what New York has scored this year. And obviously it was kind of an anomaly last time, when you played them. I don't know how the Giants even did what they did, But yeah, I'm gonna go with Commanders for this game, and I'm going to say Commanders by 10 points actually, because I think that yeah, the last time they played was just an outlier, and they are going to be ready to play and ball out against the Giants, who I just feel bad for Brian DeBoll because he did so well last year, and then this year has just been a plethora of injuries. His O-line, like, completely just destroyed his offense, essentially, where it's like, if you don't have an O-line, I mean, it's just proof at this point that your offense is gonna struggle immensely in today's league. But yeah, Commanders by 7. Moving on, we have Buccaneers 49ers. Obviously, after last week, they're really gonna give the Niners the benefit of the doubt. This might have been a game a couple of weeks ago where it's like, if they, because I think the Buccaneers, they beat Tennessee, and then they've been on a fat losing streak type of thing. But if you look at even this last game against Houston, where they were eye for eye with a CJ Stroud that set the record for passing or whatever, and their offense finally came alive, type of thing. They might have been like, oh man, this could be a ball game. This could be one of those games where, oh, San Fran isn't going to be able to do well, or it's going to be a close game. But now with the tables turned, even both teams coming off of a win, I just don't really see any chance for I just don't see any chance for the Buccaneers. Like, I'm sorry for them because honestly, like, they're right in there in their division, but this is probably just a loss that they're gonna have to take. It's just not gonna be very good for them. And I mean, they're missing Ryan Neal is out, and then you have, Evans, who didn't participate in practice but had a good game last week. Levante David, Carlton Davis, a couple of your veteran stouts. Even Devin White with a foot injury, who's questionable, who was full in practice. And then looking at the Niners, you really have only Aaron Banks is out, and Nick Zakej with biceps, he is out. But yeah, looking at this is super, super healthy. Trent Williams had full participation in practice, even though he had a lingering injury. And what do you have all the weapons. Kittle had a huge game. You have McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk. Purdy finally didn't play like he was, Mr. Irrelevant, I guess. I hate to say that about him, but yeah, I really don't think that Tampa Bay has much of a shot here. I will say that their run defense is pretty good, but I think that Shanahan's gonna know that, and he's not really gonna challenge them up the middle. And he's gonna use McCaffrey and all of his weapons in the receiving game a bit more, because obviously you look at the secondary of Tampa Bay, and they're a little banged up. So yeah, I'm fully gonna go with San Fran in this game, and I'm gonna say San Fran by 14, to be honest with you. Because until the Buccaneers prove that they can score, a fat amount of points every single week, I'm gonna say that they're inconsistent and that, oh, they have good potential, but you know, you're also going up against the defense of the Niners, which I haven't really mentioned, and it's like Chase Young and Nick Bosa, of course, and Armstead, and it's like beating a dead horse or whatever at this point. How talented this Niners defense is, and they are fully win now, and they're gonna try and go for the number one spot over the Eagles because they're one of the few teams that is close enough record wise to actually take it from the Eagles. So yeah, Niners by 14. That's what I'm gonna say. Jets versus Bills. This is kind of an interesting thing. The Bills coming off a stupid loss. I will say it, a stupid loss against Denver. I do not think that Denver wins this game. It's like you miss a 41-yarder, which I'm sorry, but if you are in the National Football League, a 41-yarder in today's day and age should nearly be a gimme. And Will Lutz has been in the league long enough that it's like he shouldn't have had to have a second chance at 36 yards to win it. Like, they should have lost that game. but the Denver kind of got handed one. They got handed a win essentially, where it's like, oh yeah, your defense can't stop Josh Allen at the end of the game, who has, and I hate to say this, but who has had really bad ends to the game where he can't win the game for his team, Josh Allen, on more than one occasion. But this is a game that Buffalo really needs to win. They have to win this game. I'm sorry. They lose to New York here. That gives more cause to the Jets being able to, somehow sneak into the playoffs, maybe potentially, because who knows what's going to happen with the AFC, with the AFC North. And I mean, this is obviously a divisional game, a 4 o'clock game, but as Buffalo, goodness gracious, will it send your team into disarray if you lose this game? Like, I'm sorry, but you cannot lose this game. I find it crazy that I'm even saying this about Buffalo. Like Buffalo, but then again, the thing that I'll say is it's a division game. You just have fired your offensive coordinator. Who knows how much they're going to change, especially since the last time they played was Monday night. So they had, essentially like a shorter week. But who knows what their offense is going to look like, and they're obviously going up against a Jets defense that is very, very good. Where it's like you may have to try and run or do some really creative stuff to, work around them. And, now I'm going to look at the injury report, and it's like the Jets, their tackle Dwayne Brown is out. They don't have Chaz Surratt. Billy Turner is out. Garrett Wilson has an elbow injury, which just doesn't sound very good, for catching the football. And, so quite a few injuries to some notable guys. And then Quincy Williams, who's been playing like lights out this year, was a full participant in practice, but it was, at a designated, and even Mekhi Becton, their star tackle that they drafted years ago, or who's supposed to be a star, is on the injury report. And then you look at Josh Allen was on the injury report for whatever reason, Micah Hyde, but yeah, and then Jordan Phillips, their DT, a few injuries here, and Christian Benford, but they have been banged up in the secondary all year. Crazy, but I don't really think the Jets are a team that, and especially with Garrett Wilson being somewhat banged up, who knows if he's going to be able to go out and just play the way he usually does, hampering an injury. But yeah, goodness gracious, it is, it's definitely in the Bills ballpark to win this game, and they really have to get up above 500. I really don't think I would be saying this about this team at this point in the year. And they've lost games that they shouldn't this year. And I feel sorry for their fan base, cuz yeah, it's really, really crazy what has transpired this year with the Bills. But with that being said, I really think that they still have, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. I think that those two guys can really, really get it done. And they are going to make sure that they get it done this game. Because I really don't think that, I really don't think that Stephon Diggs wants anybody to think that they're going to just recoil to adversity and they're going to go out and they're going to win this game. I don't think they're going to win it by much, though. I think that it's going to be tough with a new offensive coordinator, but that could also play both ways. Maybe New York doesn't know what they have to prepare for. But like I said, on a shorter week, they're going up against, they're a good defensive team, especially against the pass. And obviously, Josh Allen has looked rough some games. So I am actually honestly going to say, I'm only going to say Buffalo Bills by 1 in this game. Because I think it could be a very, very grueling game. to be honest with you. And I just think, I mean, this could be the case too, 7 points, but I think that this game could be a lot tougher than I think anyone's giving it credit for, with two teams that are very close record-wise, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, 79.6% favor to the Bills," which I just don't think is accurate, to be honest, especially with how they've been playing lately. But, moving on, we have Seahawks against the Rams. The Seahawks winning the game last week that they really needed to win because they had to come off a very fat loss to Baltimore, and I mean, even though it was only Washington that they beat, they still won a close game. And I mean, you're not too far removed from having beat Cleveland. And I think that if this team is going to look at a game where they're like, oh, this is where we can play to our potential against a team that is, maybe not as good offensively as, a lot of other teams, but their defense is as good as just about any other top defense. And, and they beat them. So if Seattle can actually harness that and get on that and play like that every single game, this can be a very dangerous team because Seattle, I think, has a pretty good defense. I think they obviously got exposed to Baltimore, which I think is a lot easier than a lot of people realize. But this, is a game that, Seattle wants to win. You look at the way that San Fran won last week, they're obviously neck and neck with trading blows with their games, type of thing. And I mean, you look at this, it's like San Fran is clearly still probably the team to beat in this division with not even 150 points given up yet and, just over 250 points scored, where the rest of the division is, still 200 or below, so it's pretty crazy. I do look at this and I see Tyler Lockett questionable, unfortunate. Jamal Adams obviously questionable, and then I look at Kobe Durant on the Rams questionable. Kobe Durant has been playing pretty well. I think on a struggling Rams team. But yeah, Jamal Adams' injury is a knee injury. Tyler Lockett is a hammy, and hammies are always one of those dicey things where it's like, oh, this can affect, players for weeks, people for weeks. But yeah, looking at Kobe Durant is also a shoulder injury, but Matthew Stafford's coming back. He was a full participation in practice. Puka Nacua full on an injury designation still. Cooper Kupp still, but he was full. So, or I mean, Cooper Kupp did not participate. I'm sorry, but he's obviously not listed here. And I mean, maybe they were just resting him. You can never be too careful with your star guy. Aaron Donald didn't participate, but I'm sure he's just getting veteran rest. But this could be a pretty close game. I think that when you're looking at Seattle, I think it's crazy that they give the Rams, this much because the Rams offense hasn't really looked the same. And yeah, they're obviously coming off of a bye week, but yeah, the Seahawks, this headline, they obviously lost week 1 against the Rams. And I do remember that, the Rams, they started off the season pretty hot. Like, people were like, "Oh, they're no longer rebuilding." But obviously Puka Nacua looked really, really, really good. And I mean, I'm not saying he's not still good or anything like that, but they've been kind of, it's been hard for them to get him involved, it seems, since the QB kind of carousel started or the injury to Stafford, and even since Cooper Kupp came back, because, sometimes your offense just doesn't flow the same way. But, we'll see, how good Stafford looks. McVay is a pretty brilliant head coach, so is Carroll, I think. But I think the Seattle Seahawks honestly have the advantage. I think that they just got kind of week 1 can be such an anomaly because you're not sure of what exactly teams are going to look like necessarily. You really don't get that much big of a picture, in preseason because a lot of teams don't play their starters. So week one's kind of an anomaly. But yeah, I am gonna go with Seattle for this game. I think that this graphic is a little inaccurate. Obviously this team beat, and if I remember correctly, they smothered the Seahawks, week one. But yeah, I think that the Seahawks are gonna match up better. They're gonna play better, and especially, coming off of a Washington win last week. And I mean, if you look at, the way that the last game went for the Rams, I mean, they couldn't really run the ball that much, and against a Green Bay team that is struggling. So I fully expect the Seahawks to kind of come out and take charge in this game. But I'm still only going to say them by 7 because I really do want to think that their offense can be really, really good, but it just hasn't been as consistent as I would expect it to be with the number of weapons that they have. But yeah, Seahawks, I said 7. You know what? We're going to go with 6 on this game. Moving on, we have the night game, Vikings versus the Broncos. This is a very interesting game. It is at Mile High. They're giving the game to Denver, interestingly enough, here, I guess. Is that loading run? Let me refresh this. So, I mean, it looks like their kind of game odds is bizarre here or whatever, like almost like they want to give Minnesota, but who knows? But, ever since Kirk has went out and the Vikings trade for Dobbs, who didn't even start, the game after until, their Jaron Hall, their QB, got hurt, and then he comes in and he just looks like he belongs on this team. And, you know, I think that Justin Jefferson he's still on IR or reserved or something like that. That's kind of interesting to me. Let me see here. Let me see what they say about him on the actual. So he has a hammy and he's questionable and he was limited in practice. But to me, I feel like the Vikings, the way that they're playing right now, and it's crazy. They're 4-1 on, the away or whatever. And people want to say that the Denver Broncos are on a heato. Let me tell you one thing that I think. Kansas City, Mahomes had like a fever and was just off this game. The game before that with Green Bay, we barely lost to them. We didn't play very well at all. We are not that great of a team this year. We are highly inconsistent, And then it's like, the weeks before that, it's like, I mean, and then it's like the game against Buffalo. You cannot tell me that this isn't a game that they lose 9 times out of 10, maybe even more than that, 99 times out of 100, where don't make me laugh when you think that, oh, they beat a good team. Buffalo has been struggling recently. But then you look at the Vikings, who are on a real heater. They are on a real heater, with 5 straight. 5 straight at least. Let's look here. When you can't see where the L is, let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Their last loss coming to Kansas City, who is a real team. And they still only lost by 7. And I mean, it wasn't that close of a game to begin with, I think. But, after this game is when the Vikings were like, we're turning it on. Obviously, the Carolina isn't that great of a team, type of thing. And then you look at the rest of these games, and I think that even against Tampa Bay, it's like in this game, early in the year, really what was killing the Vikings was their turnovers, in my opinion. The amount of turnovers that they have was crazy and insurmountable kind of turnovers where it's like you're probably going to lose those games, regardless of how many yards obviously Cousins is throwing for. And then the first game that you win, he doesn't throw for anything, where it's like, look at this. But yeah, you are coming off playing a Vikings team that they have been balling out. I mean, here's the thing too, is they went They played against San Fran, beat San Fran, which was a statement win. They beat, an Atlanta team that is a pretty good team this year, contrary to what people want to believe, type of thing. And this was a game that Dobbs had to come in hot and they were losing really hard and he just brought them back. And then, last week against New Orleans, I really thought it was going to be a closer game. I thought this was going to be a better test against Dobbs. Comes out and has a pretty good game. And this is all without Jefferson. So even if they get Jefferson back and even if he's only like a partial contributor, he's going to make the rest of this offense look even better because people aren't going to like the second you leave Jefferson alone and he's fully healthy and you're not, focusing your game plan on him, he's going to destroy you. Like, in my opinion, he is still only the second best wide receiver in the league, second to Davante Adams, only because Davante this year, has been having a down year because of the shitty coaching on his team. And then, because even last year, I think that Davante had, he had 14 touchdowns and whatever else, but it's like Jefferson in a few years here is going to be, he's going to be the name brand wide receiver of the NFL, where it's like, everybody already knows who he is. And it sucks that he got hurt this year. He was still having a great year. But, with the way that Denver has been playing and the way that, they are, I think that they are susceptible to really get exposed this weekend. It is in Mile High. But I personally think that Denver is, they're hyping this game up as two heaters. Whereas it's like Denver has fluked through games, whereas you have the Vikings, who it's like you could say they fluked against Atlanta. But then again, you can say that, like, in years to come, if Dobbs ends up being on the Vikings for 5+ years, that this was his game where he was like, oh, I'm going to make the statement that I should be at least the franchise QB for years. This is that game, Atlanta. And I just don't see it with Denver. They barely won. And they won off of literally a stupid flag because of 12 man. It's not even I'm not going to lie. It's one of those things that it's like, I think the NFL, and and this is coming from a Packers fan, but for years, the Packers would do the hard count. Even Jordan Love does the hard count pretty well, I guess now, not on the level of like Aaron Rodgers or anything like that. But it's like with Aaron Rodgers, they were catching guys almost at least once a game to have like a free play. And to get the chains going on offense, type of thing. But goodness, the Vikings are on a true heater, in my opinion. The Broncos, prove it to me. Go out, have a duking match with the Vikings, who are actually hot, and show that you actually belong for having a heater and not just playing a bunch of teams that they fucked up. They fucked up. They essentially gave you somewhat of an advantage in the point category to where you were able to win. I am sorry, but I just do not trust it with Denver. They are obviously really, really healthy. You look at the Vikings, and you have Jaren Hall, who's out. Madison is questionable with a concussion, which is kind of unfortunate. KJ Osborne was a full participant in practice, and then you also have Hawkinson, who is a full participant. And like I said, Justin Jefferson could come back. And I don't know why, but they did list Joshua Dobbs, on the injury report, but he was a full participant. And it's like, you look at the Broncos, the only player they're missing is PJ Locke. And then the other guys that they have on the injury report is they have Judy, they have Marvin Mims, and not very many other players that I'm like that are worth mentioning to determine whether or not the Broncos should be able to perform in this game. But, I'm gonna give this game to the Vikings, and I'm actually gonna give it to them by 10 points. So, I personally think that the Vikings' claim to how they've been playing is a lot better than the Broncos. The Broncos, I'm sorry, but they just I mean, the thing about the Vikings is that they're about as hot as they were last year. It's just that they've had more turnovers and more points taken off of their team essentially because of those turnovers. So I really think that I expect them to, come to Denver here and beat the Broncos because I even if Madison is like questionable and he's on a limited role, I think that they beat the Broncos, and I'm gonna say them by 10 points. But I did have the Eagles up here. I don't think I'm gonna predict this yet. I think that this is a crazy kind of bait game where it's like I don't know why they're saying Kansas City is gonna win, by so much. Because they obviously beat them in the Super Bowl last year. But yeah, I'm not going to say any more than that. I'm actually going to kind of turn it over to you guys to ask me any questions or what you think about this weekend's games. I do think there's a good amount of games this weekend. And obviously this year in the NFL has been pretty strange. I guess There's obviously a lot of injuries to QBs, which are insane. But otherwise, I think that a lot of good games this weekend, and I'm really, really excited for tomorrow. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, just ask away right now. Otherwise, I am going to end the broadcast here in a second. And I thank you for watching, even if you don't have any questions. But that's it for this week of Castcast, and I'll see you guys. I don't know about Tuesday. I might honestly do something. Might do something Monday night since it's Thanksgiving next week. It'll probably be on Monday night, to be honest with you, when I stream. But yeah, just watch for that, online notification or the little red broadcasting symbol because it's probably gonna be Monday, to be honest. And then I may do a broadcast when because I'm gonna be at home in Minnesota next Wednesday through Saturday. So I'll probably do a broadcast like Friday night for Sunday's games, a week from tomorrow. But otherwise, just watch for that live notification. And I thank you guys for watching Castcast. And go Pack Go.